My name is Eric Prather. I'm an engineer focused solely on APQP at GE Aerospace in our engines group. Um, I've been a member of this SMIG team for a little bit. I've done APQP my whole career. I'm a true believer in what we're doing and what we're preaching today. So hopefully people find some value in what we're trying to share. My background is automotive, so I have seen kind of both sides in what they're doing and how we're translating it into aerospace business, which is pretty exciting. There's a lot going on in that space, but you're not here to learn about me. Let's jump into the material. So back into Slido, from your knowledge of APQP activities, which disciplines would you involve in new product introduction and APQP? And you can answer, there's not one answer. You can answer as many of these as you would like. So it is everyone has kind of a piece of the puzzle here. We surprisingly, not everyone put quality. I'll say in my experience, everyone goes exclusively to quality. So that's an interesting difference, but it's going to change deliverable to deliverable. You know, what are we working on? But in the whole scope of a project, we really try to get everybody involved. Yeah, so this section that I'm going to cover, we're going to talk about who is involved. And the first thing, and one of the big tools that we want to push is a RACI. So we use them. Everyone on the team sounds like they have it in their organization as well. But what is a RACI? RACI is just an acronym. So who is accountable for owning the completion of the deliverable itself? And then who is responsible for doing the deliverable? Who is consulted, so providing their input or expertise, and who is informed? So who are we telling, status updates and letting them know how things have gone? So one of the big divisions here in setting this up, and something that we struggle with all the time, is people will say, well, who owns this? The accountable person is who we want to contact when we need this. Who are we calling to say, where is my PFMEA? I need this done. Who has it? And the accountable is going to make sure that it gets done, even if they're not the person actually in the room doing it. Anyone responsible is not the person who owns it, but they have to do the work. They're creating these documents and creating these processes and getting everything set up. So they're the doing. So there's only one accountable for every single line item. There needs to be a single function or person that we contact when there is a need to follow up. Responsible can be as many people as it takes to get the work done. Consulted is more someone will tag in. They're going to contribute and they're going to do some of the work, but they're not necessarily as critical to getting things done as the responsible. And then informed is going to be maybe your project managers or project leads who need to know the status, but they're not doing the work. They're usually kind of in a bigger role. If we want to jump to the next.
Before we jump to the next, there's also a supported role in a RACI chart.
Yeah, so I'll say where I used to work, we did the RACIC, RASIC, so we have the S for support. We do not currently, we're not doing that. We've cut the support role and kind of rolled it into really around that consulting role. But yeah, your company may call it a RACIC. You may have that S function in yours. These are guidelines, and you're going to make it fit for your organization, whatever works for you and whatever is your standard. So we're going to talking through how to build out that RACI and how to really get started. Our example today, we're going to focus on a process FMEA for internal manufacturing. Anyone who's been involved knows that we have a decent sized team working on the process FMEA. It's very cross-functional, very multidisciplinary. So going through how to do that, the PFMEA process is review the product and the process. We want to identify our failures and assign risk values to everything to better understand what is our overall risk for each process step. And then we want to put in some corrective actions. So develop a mitigation strategy so we're not just living with those risks. So who do we need to involve? So we have a few examples down on the screen, and we'll jump into Slido here in a second. But remember, we're looking at accountable, responsible, consulted, informed. And the roles that we've picked out are quality, program management, manufacturing, operations, design, and MRP or material planning. There's no right or wrong answers, right? Everyone's going to have different terminology for the people they use. These might not be standard roles in your company. They might have slightly different tasks and responsibilities. But it's thinking of who is responsible for what, who has what expertise, and what can everyone bring to the table to make sure that all voices are accounted for and that we've kind of satisfied all of our stakeholders. Okay, so if everyone wants to get into Slido, the question is here on the right. So who in the process FMEA RACI is accountable? So we have a few different functions. Like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. It can vary organization to organization, but let's see what everyone has. So accountable, again, is who is the person that owns this? Who is responsible to, or I shouldn't say responsible there. Who is the person that we have to make sure is getting it all done, keeping everything on track and ensuring the PFMEA is completed? Yeah, so overwhelmingly, we have votes for manufacturing, secondary quality, and then program management. I agree, we don't really see operations or design much responsible for this. I see a lot of quality in my past, but it definitely can go either way. So a good spread of answers. So in this same example, so who in this case would be consulted? So these are people that are contributing to the PFMEA. Not necessarily the level of responsible, but still will have maybe a column or two that they are contributing to. Yeah, operations. I'm glad to see design included. A lot of teams struggle to get design in the room. They're a super critical voice, especially around severities. Quality, we tend to see more in the responsible space. But again, that's going to vary organization to organization. The important thing here is if you are accountable, you may be responsible, depending on how also you set this up, but definitely not accountable and consulted, right? You're really going to not be in both of those spaces. If we want to go to the next slide. So here, who would be responsible in this same example? So this is the main people that are doing the FMEA. Yeah, we've got a good number of responses. So let's talk through this. So we see a manufacturing in higher numbers, similar to how we saw them in being accountable. Some organizations will have accountable and responsible available to the same person. It might be A/R. Some organizations have them completely separate. So just to keep in mind, if that is your organization, define one accountable. Who is the single person we're going to go talk to make sure it's done, and then responsible being just everyone else doing the work. So frequently we see quality has a high level of responsibility in the PFMEAs. You might also include operation and design because they're the only people who can answer some of the questions. So they are responsible for some of the content. Again, it really depends on what is your RACI or RACIC process and what everyone's roles are. Finally, hitting the I in RACI, who is informed? So this is a person who is not necessarily doing the work, but just getting a report out. Yeah, generally it's going to be our program management. They want status updates. They need to know how the project is going, but they're not going to be in the room filling out line items. They're usually not close enough to the product or process to be able to contribute much. I will say design engineering and ops and quality should probably be at a higher level than informed. They really need to be contributing to making sure that the PFMEA is done completely. So really consider, should they be more informed more than informed in your organization, right? They should be helping doing the informing. Material planning also probably an inform. They're usually not at the table trying to figure out where the risk is in our process. Let's move to the next slide, please. So here's an example of an output. So when we're making these RACIs, we'll have, you know, the whole of the APQP suite listed down the left side. So what is the deliverable? And then at the top, we're going to have all of the different functions that make up our cross-functional or multidisciplinary team. So again, listing out accountable, responsible, consulted, and informed. So in the example here that we have, manufacturing is being accountable and responsible. And again, this might differ in your organization. This is definitely not true across the board. This is just an example. And you might even structure your RACI differently, right? You might not use slashes in yours. You might just have a single role, and that's okay, right? I just want to emphasize this is an example of what this might look like. So if you've never done it before, this is something that you could definitely use, and it's easy enough to put together. If we want to go to the next slide. So what we have here, this is showing there was a link posted in chat earlier of the AESQ supplemental material. You can go to the AESQ website. We have a template available. So over here on the right where it says page 2, this shows the elements of an APQP project. And across the top is the functions or business roles. So we have some suggested functions, and we have the explanations for what's in the RACI. Use the terminology that makes sense for you. Use what your business does, right? The important thing is to just clearly identify who is responsible, who is accountable, who is consulting, and who is being informed, and really having a clear roadmap of who's doing what to make it easy on the business as you go through. Right? Build this into procedures so that next time you have a project, you don't have to have the discussion again. Right? It's very easy to just take this template and build one out and then use it. So I'm going to wrap my portion up. So some recommended actions. These are good enablers. Create the RACI once, proceduralize it, make sure that it makes sense for you and that you can use it. So use the APQP and PPAP timing plan. Definitely bring in your leadership to agree, right? We don't want to assign people to things that don't have the bandwidth, don't have the scope, whatever it might be. So make sure that when you do proceduralize this, that you do get any sign-offs. And then consider versions for different types of change situations. We are a long lead business. There's not always a ton of NPI, but change management is hugely important. And we invoke APQP and change management. So making sure that we know for each situation, these are the people that we involve and figure out when and how it all fits together. It is kind of best practice for building out this RACI tool.